Hi, my name is Mary Esther Malloy, and welcome to the Mindful Cesarean. If you are planning a birth by cesarean or preparing for a VBAC, we have some inspiring birth stories here for you. Please also visit themindfulcesarean.com, where you can download our toolkit for a healthy birth. And now let's listen to Suzanne's powerful story of her 2 children's births.
My sort of gentle cesarean journey actually began before my son was born, right? Like in the hospital. I had had an induction and a very, very long, arduous labor. And finally the call was made that I would have to go to cesarean. This is my first birth I'm talking about. And it was really devastating for me because I had worked so hard to not be in that position. Like my whole goal of the pregnancy was like, do anything but have a cesarean. Because the idea of having surgery while awake was absolutely terrifying to me. So the OB who was attending at the hospital and was attending my birth came to me and said, you know, you've worked so hard and I can see you're really dedicated to a vaginal birth, but it's not going to happen. But I can tell you now, we're going to give you a low transverse incision and you should be able to VBAC with your second baby if you decide to get pregnant again. So I feel like I was on a VBAC journey like before my son was even born, right? Because I had already had those discussions. So there I was, exhausted, and in the OR for my first surgery. I'm so sorry, it's been a long time, but I still get really emotional, so forgive me if I'm a little choked up. But the surgery didn't go well. It was really a terrible experience. It was physically demanding, to say the least, and emotionally it really, really destroyed me. It also just sort of mechanically didn't go well. I had some complications that, you know, sort of heightened the drama of the situation. But I did heal well physically, so that's good. But emotionally, it was a long, long road before I could even consider getting pregnant again, because I felt like I just couldn't face the idea of maybe having a second cesarean. And I just wasn't like confident that I would have a successful VBAC because my first birth was so difficult and I had never gone into labor on my own and I just really didn't trust my body at all. But finally the moment came where it was sort of now or never, and I decided like, okay, we're gonna have this second baby, and I got pregnant and I had some long, really meaningful discussions with my husband, and we were like, okay, we're gonna just do it how you've always wanted to do it. Home birth. My husband was like, you're gonna get whatever doula you want, you're gonna go to as many like acupuncture appointments. He's like, this is gonna be the kitchen sink birth, like no stone unturned. Like, let's just make sure we do everything that we can to be sure that you have the birth you want. And that was great, just knowing that he put aside his own reservations and was all there to support me. That was so, so meaningful. I called like 20 different home birth midwives. I found one person who would meet with me and consider taking me, an incredible midwife who's sadly no longer practicing. I was one of her last births, and we've joked that I pushed her into retirement, but that's another story. Anyway, so wonderful midwife, we were all set up. I had a relatively uneventful pregnancy, and my due date just came and went, and I just kept on being pregnant. I went well past my due dates as I had with my son, which is why I was induced in the first place. And then I had a week of prodromal labor where I was up all night laboring, and for as hard as that was, it was still great because I could feel my body working, and that was really amazing and so restorative for me. And then there was finally that 7th or 8th day when things started picking up, and next thing I knew, like, my water broke in my bedroom, and I mean, just that alone was so surprising. Like, I didn't even, for all the books I had read and videos I had watched, when my own water broke, I was like, what's happening? This is amazing. And it really gave me so much confidence. Like, I'm gonna do this. Like, blow up that birth pool, call the doula. Like, let's do this. And things just ticked right along. And then my son went to stay with a friend overnight, and my midwife came and my doula, and I found myself so attached to my husband. He was the only person I wanted, It was so great to have so much support, but it was this wonderful bonding experience with my husband. And the next thing I knew, time to push, which was, again, so surprising, right? Because it's like I was earning the confidence of my body, like, with each step. Like, oh, wait, I'm doing it? Oh, I can do it, because look, I'm already doing it. So anyway, I started pushing, and that process became so extended. My contractions were far apart, and not very productive, I guess you would say. I just wasn't able to push the baby down and keep her down. She kept kind of going back up into my body, down and up, down and up, down and up. And we tried everything that we could. I took castor oil shots, and an acupuncturist came. I was hanging from a bar and naked with needles, and I just was like, give me everything. Whatever you say. I really want this VBAC more than anything. And so at the end of what I found out later was about 9 hours of pushing at home, we decided that it was time to transfer, which, like, I always sort of mark as a very surreal moment in the whole process, because I was pushing at home in my living room. Like, I really was so ready for the home birth. So to suddenly think about going to the hospital, and all the things that means when you have a certain kind of residual trauma from a previous birth was really deeply unsettling. And I've said before, like, I forgot, like, how to get dressed. Thank God my doula was there, because she was like, here are your underwear. Like, I was so discombobulated. I didn't know how to sort of reframe my whole experience in terms of going to the hospital, but off we went. We drove about an hour to Nassau University Medical Center. I fell asleep in the car. Like a crazy person, I walked in from the from the parking lot, and I'm signing papers, and they're like, so you're complete? What, you're complete? And I'm like, yes, I've been pushing for a long time. And I'm like filling out paperwork, standing up. I don't know, like, it was just not like of this world. Anyway, luckily my midwife had privileges there, so I was able to have continuity of care, and that was so important. So we just moved the birth from my home into the hospital. I continued to push. Again, she would come down and come back up. And finally, the attending OB said, okay, we'll do a vacuum extraction, but only in an OR. We won't do it in the birth room, because if the vacuum doesn't work, then it's time for surgery. So I said, okay. So then the next thing you know, I'm like, it was, again, so surreal, like rolling into the OR when just hours before I thought I would be delivering on my bed. And we did the vacuum. It was unsuccessful. They started milling around, getting ready for surgery, and I was laying on the table, and I just was like thinking about how my baby was tracing so beautifully. I was strong. I wanted to keep going. I wanted this so, so badly. And I just said, I'm not done. I want to push more. I need to push more. Like, I need this feedback. I know I can do it. And everyone in the room, surprisingly, just said, okay, just keep going. You can do it. So they let me continue pushing in the OR for another hour and a half. Until finally, I just looked into the eyes of my amazing midwife, and I just said, listen, now it's time. It was the most empowering thing, because I finally made the choice. I knew that I had gone to like the deepest part of my soul and tried so hard to get this birth that I wanted so desperately, but then I knew that it wasn't there for me, and so I was able to choose this other birth. And that was amazing. And I desperately wanted to see my baby before she was cleaned, because my son had sort of arrived to me wrapped and wearing a hat, and that was very strange. And so they did that. They let me see her, which was a transformative moment for me, because it really connected her to my body in a way that hadn't happened with the birth of my son. So having that moment of seeing her just born was amazing. I was allowed to do skin to skin. I was breastfeeding immediately in the OR while they were sewing me closed. And it was amazing. We had this wonderful, quiet, peaceful time as the surgery was completed, where I was nursing my baby. There was no worry. I knew she was there. She was close to me. My husband was there. My doula was in the OR. My midwife was there. It was a totally different experience than my first time around. I mean, truly a gentle cesarean. Even though it was unplanned, that's what it wound up being. And it was such a drastically different experience than my first time around, that I just feel like, why can't they all be this way? And that's part of why I'm so grateful to be part of this project, because it's really encouraging this type of cesarean. For me, it was totally transformative and really restored my belief in my body and myself, that whole experience. So that's
Thank you for listening to this mindful cesarean birth story. For more articles, resources, and to download the Toolkit for a Healthy Birth, please visit themindfulcesarean.com. Again, thank you for watching. I'm Mary Esther Malloy.